So welcome to Satsang. Namaste. So the intention for this gathering is the awakening of love in the being. And it's not just about awakening love in the heart, but you could say the awakening of love in your entire being, your aura, your mind, the cells of your body, your emotions, your prana, your kundalini, all these aspects, so that you can become an embodiment of that energy. And so much so that you see the world through that filter, through that lens. You become that, and the world becomes that, and that's all you see, that's all you feel, that's all you know. And then there's no more problems. It actually doesn't matter how the world challenges you and whatever circumstances you might find yourself, your being is just beaming love. And you can see the whole picture. One of the problems with humans is we have trouble seeing love because we can't see the whole picture of why it's all happening. But in the space of the divine, everything is happening so perfectly that there's no need to kind of fix or change in order to make it better. It's all perfect as it is. And the particular, you could say, being that I wanted to introduce tonight is Christ. And so this is a picture of him. You can see the reason also why I bring this card is because the card itself is blessed or programmed with the energy itself, with his energy. So for a moment, you can set your intention to connect into or feel the blessing of the card. That's really, really important. A setting of an intention is like a prayer. It's like you're inviting that being to come alive within you. So, in other words, it's not something outside of you, it's inside of you. It is you.
It's an intention.
Intention, yeah. So we're asking and inviting his presence to be in this gathering tonight, that we may directly experience that energy. It sometimes is easier for someone to visualize him or his physical figure in the room. So you can also try that. Imagine that Christ is just sitting with you, next to you. Maybe he's cross-legged or something, sitting in lotus position or whatever, next to you, and he's just enjoying your company. You can kind of sense that, and that also can help you to feel into what he is, who he is. And one of the, or I could say a mudra, or a particular gesture that calls forth particularly his presence, is something that I kind of chuckle at, but it is so fitting. And this is the mudra of, you just kind of put your arms up like this. Oftentimes he's actually depicted like this, but in this case you could imagine like you're receiving all the hugs of the world. Since many of us are sort of isolated and we don't get many hugs, you could imagine you're receiving all the hugs of the world, all the love. This is the mudra to invite Christ into your life. And then we can release. And then try to feel into that. Because each time you do something to invoke the energy, it starts to activate you in certain ways. And if you're really sensitive, you can kind of drop into that energy and it becomes alive in you. I was thinking, it may be, for some people in the world, blasphemous to say this, but Christ, and I also call him Yeshua as well. Sometimes I call him Jesus, sometimes I call him Yeshua, sometimes I call him Emmanuel. But let's just say Yeshua. Yeshua wasn't asking to be worshipped. That wasn't his interest. It was only later on that people started to kind of project onto him and worship him. You could say, you could consider him more as like a friend or a brother. Maybe a brother, maybe would be the best word. Someone who's on your side, who's got your back, who's there when you need him. All you have to do is sort of call in whatever way. In fact, there's a particular song, I call it his song, his song, and this song is very particularly designed to trigger and bring his presence into the room. And you can listen to it. And some people who have heard some of my other gatherings may already know the words. I should have like a hymnal or something. It's in English, which is actually kind of rare for me because usually I'm chanting Sanskrit mantras. In this case, it is English, so you can listen to the words and kind of get a sense of what he's saying, what his message is. We are one through love. We are one, the bond that unites, the heart that binds, flows through love, be in its grace. Remember your place in love always. We are one. that song, you can feel the shift. So also there may be some parts of the stories that I explain regarding the historical Christ that may be surprising to you and different than what the Bible says or what is known. But you can be open to new possibilities of what actually happened, because the Bible misses actually the majority of his life. It doesn't recount, I believe, somewhere between like his age, maybe 12 to 31 or something like that, or 30. There's missing years that's not described in the New Testament. And some things that I would like to correct that I have said in previous gatherings that are not true. First of all, Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute, sort of thing. And then to add on regarding Mary Magdalene actually is Christ's or Yeshua's twin flame, meaning that the two of them did get married, they did have children together, and then they also traveled around very intensely, went from place to place, and not only healed people through miracles, and by the way, both of them together, but also held satsang. Back then probably wasn't called satsang, at least in the Palestine area, but we would call it satsang in this context, a gathering in truth where people are connecting to, you could say, a vibration that is beyond your humanness, divine vibration. So they would work together, the two of them. And the other part that I have said before that was not quite correct is I mentioned that Christ, when he was younger, healed one of his cousins, and actually I'm trying to remember which one it was, but it was actually Benjamin. Benjamin, who was connected into his family, into Christ's family, was younger at the time. Christ, I think, was something like somewhere in his 20s, like 27 or something. Benjamin was younger, and Benjamin had like, you could say, club feet, and he had deformed hands. And and he was born like that. So you think, well, if you're born with deformities, that why? It seems like unfair that God would do that to someone, make you be born with these difficulties already. And one night, Christ came to Benjamin and lay next to him underneath the stars. Like the two of them were sort of looking up at the stars, and then they looked at one another, and Christ sort of held Benjamin's this young man or boy in his arms, and suddenly it was like they were merging their consciousness. They were kind of coming together in this sort of loving embrace, and then they went into, you could say, the subtle and causal realms of being, which is a different realm. It's the causal realm is considered like a heavenly realm, or a realm of imagination where anything you think of comes true. It's interesting, isn't it? Anything, it's so far beyond the physical realm, but humans generally are not there yet. Most humans haven't quite evolved there yet, but the causal realms are like you think of something and then it manifests. And so they went up together into the causal realms, and Benjamin saw all the karma and all the reasons why he had the club foot and the deformed hands. And he went through all these sort of patterns of guilt and all the quote-unquote bad things that he had put upon himself over the years, all the guilt that he had piled over the course of all his previous lifetimes. And as he sort of went through that with the help of Yeshua, that karma was dispersed or cleared, it was healed. And then they came back down into the physical realm, and Benjamin's hands and feet were healed, were perfectly, and he stood up. He stood up on his feet for the first time, and he stood stable, and he was able to walk in a normal fashion. And he wept, he cried, and he said to Christ, I'm loyal to you forever. I'm loyal to you forever. And he was so moved. And it was interesting, Christ's response. The response was, be true to yourself, or what Christ calls the I am. Be true to the I am, which again suggests that Yeshua wasn't looking for people to worship him. He was looking for people to worship the God within them. It's very powerful. In other words, you aren't helpless. You can activate your own divinity. You can do what Christ did and more. And he also said that as well. So the primary teachings of Christ were, you could say, four major things. Number one is compassion. And this is what I was mentioning at the beginning. Mostly, we don't know when we're meeting someone what they've gone through, what their childhood was like, and what all their past lifetimes were like. So we can't see the whole picture of why that being is the way they are. So when we come in conflict with someone and they say something or attack us, or we get into some argument and we get angry, and then we hold that against them, that's only because we are having difficulty tuning into a compassionate heart, because we don't understand where they've come from, and we think that we're being somehow attacked. And then the second thing is usually when you come in contact with someone and they're attacking you, this was planned before you came into this lifetime. Your soul planned it with that soul to have this conflict so that you could look deeper into yourself and heal those parts of you that were still injured or wounded yourself. Because if you're wounded by someone else, then you're already wounded inside, and they're simply touching on a wound that you already have. So it's never the other person's fault. So that compassion. And a lot of times for us to develop compassion, we have to think, what would it be like if I were standing in the shoes of that other person. What would it feel like? What would it be like? Why would they act that way? Why would they treat me like that? And that way we can start to have a little bit, maybe a little bit better understanding. And again, it's not going to be much, but the true compassion is the awakening of the heart energy and the unification with that person. So I am that person, and that person is me. So then there's an automatic sort of reaching out to assist the person in whatever condition that they are, whether they're very upset at you or if they've done something you really mean or not. Your heart is always reaching out. It never closes down, no matter what anyone does to you. And then the second major teaching of Christ is acceptance. And, I could call it radical acceptance, which is, it is the way it is. This world is the way it is. The people are the way they are. And then we don't get so caught up in trying to change the other person so that it can suit our taste. So, because you could spend a whole lifetime trying to change someone and never be able to change them. So let them be as they are, this sort of acceptance. And then the third principle is just love, which is, I've stated in the past, love is actually a presence, it's not an emotion. So emotion would be, as an example, someone does something nice to me, and then I say, oh, that was so sweet of you to do that. I love you so much, right? That's the normal love that we feel. Then the next day, the person's in a bad mood and they lash out at you and say something to you. And now you don't feel that way at all. You shift very, very quickly. So this is the nature of like a normal emotional heart. That's not very stable. Not very stable. So true love is a presence that one feels through oneself and everywhere. And then finally, the last kind of major principle that Christ taught was understanding. And understanding is, like I said, if you can really find your true being, you start to understand people automatically, why they act the way they do, and you can read their mind if you want. It was hard for people living with Christ sometimes because he would know what you were thinking. You didn't have to say anything about what you're thinking. If, let's say, they were jealous, he would sometimes call out someone. Like there was this young man who went traveling with him to, I think it was Britain or India, I can't remember which, but maybe it was India. They went together to India. And then when they came back and they got together at Mount Carmel, which is in the Palestine, kind of near Bethlehem area, then he mentioned kind of in front of people, oh, this person, I already know that you're kind of envious of me. And that's okay. He was just stating a fact. He wasn't trying to insult the guy who had traveled with him. It was just, he knows. He doesn't have to try to figure out. It's just, he's in tune with everyone, so he can read people's minds. So understanding, and at some point you start to understand people and read their minds. You just know what they're thinking. So, having said that, I wanted to chant a mantra to invoke the Christ energy. This is actually both, you could say, Hebrew and Sanskrit. So they're pretty much the same thing. In Sanskrit, the mantra is aham prema, but in Hebrew, it would be achem prema. It's pretty much the same mantra, but it means I am love. And so this is a way to kind of touch into that presence of love that we're speaking about. Aham Prema. Aham Prema. Aham Prema. Aham Prema. Aham Prema. And then we take 3 deep breaths, breathing into our heart chakra, our heart space, breathing the light there. And that light is the Christ light. Feel that divine light spread through your body, from your heart to your chest, up through your throat, into your head, into your shoulders and your arms. Down through your torso. The light spreads down into your hips, through all of your organs, down through your legs and your feet. That Christ's light transforms your body into a temple of God, so pure, sparkling in the divine light. Feel that love that you are. And through that particular visualization, you can literally become a different person. some of the teachings that Christ spoke of are, you could say, quite mystical. I would characterize him as a great mystic, and he, some of these things that I'm going to mention to you come from a book called Anna, Grandmother of Jesus. You could say it's a different take on the Christ story, but here are some of the principles that he espoused. He said, "This is the creative principle out of which comes all righteousness, meaning the right use of energy." Righteousness, the right use of energy. That's so helpful because every person has a choice about how to use their energy. And when you want to become a quote-unquote teacher of righteousness, you need to learn how to use your energy in order to tap in to your soul or your divine being. And this is what he's talking about. He said, "No other commandment is there than to love the one God within you and to love and serve the one creation you also are, so that you may have life more abundantly." So, in a sense, he's saying, worship yourself. Notice he's not saying, oh, worship me. He's not saying that. Worship yourself, your innermost being, which is pure and perfect. And it's like you're activating the divine light each time you turn your attention towards it, and it becomes bigger, because the point here is you could say all you want, yes, I have a divine light inside me, but if you're not feeling it, then what's the point? Right? What's the point in even saying that if you don't even experience directly that divine presence in you, which is love? He said, believe more so in the witness born within your own heart than in that which you perceive to be miracles wrought at my hand. So many people focus so much on the miracles that he has performed that they forget to look within. So it's always looking at the outside and saying, oh, that person is magical somehow, and so I must worship them. And, he's saying, no, look inside you and try to find that light which is already there. Try to activate it. When you, rub two stones together and you try to make the spark, it's kind of like that. You're trying to create this spark within you to come alive. And he says, for I do nothing of myself. It is the Father, Mother, Creator within me that does the works you see. So he's saying that he doesn't do it. He's not the doer. He's not that divine being or that divine power which runs everything is running him. So it's a sort of very deep humility. He says, for I do nothing of myself. It is the Father, Mother, Creator within me that does the works you see. Likewise, it is that same Creator within you who multiplies your fortune and who cares for you day by day. And then the beautiful sort of metaphor, consider the gentle lilies of the field. They neither spin nor weave. Yet their raiment is beautiful to behold. So he's saying, we kind of comparing it to a human. A human is like pushing and pushing and pushing and trying so hard to be successful or to look good, or to appear good, somehow prove to people that they're worthy. And here it's like the lilies have this natural raiment. They're beautiful and they're not doing anything. They're just being. Observe our brother the sparrow, how it freely wings through the heavens overhead. In innocence and trust, it glides upon the wind, supported in all things, whither it goes. So you can learn by watching the bird float in the air, and it's gliding, right? So why can't a person glide through life? It's totally possible. I spoke to one person recently. I've spoken to other people too, who are defending their worries. And by the way, this is also posted all over Facebook. People sort of, you could feel the worry through the Facebook posts. Many, one has to sort of be careful about reading Facebook because there's so much energy of worry behind it, So he's saying, be like the sparrow and trust in your father, mother, creator. Trust in God. In other words, relax a little bit. It's like life is not so serious. Therefore, be not anxious, for with your worry you cannot purchase more time against the morrow. Nor does your anxiety add credibility to your stature among men. So, just because you worry doesn't give you more time. It's not adding to your stature. It's not somehow giving you more sort of stature in terms of people look up to you because you worry. Worry's not helpful to people. People don't look up to you because you worry. Rather, be still and go within to the treasure of your heart, and you shall be given all things. So, and this is so deep, right? We base our happiness so much on the exterior, so much on the comforts of the body and the circumstances and the people who are, how they treat us and how the world is acting and how everyone else is around us. We get so influenced by the outside, and so few people actually go within to find their inner delight. So few. It just because we're taught to be doing things all the time. And it's maybe not so easy to go within, because once you get on a roll of worrying about, am I going to have enough money? Am I going to have enough food? Are my children going to be taken care of? Is my health going to be okay? I mean, there's so much concerns that there's no room for meditation. He says, your father, mother knows wherewith you are needful. In other words, how you're needful, and gives to you even before you ask. Meaning, when you dive into your own being, the manifestation around you automatically gives you what you need. Like, if you're connecting to your inner divinity, the manifestation helps you naturally. Like, you're so relaxed and loving and calm and peaceful that the sort of universe starts to flow with you. The stressed out person is kind of going against the flow, so the whole life becomes a struggle. I have to worry to get things done. No, you don't have to worry to get things done. Verily, all that you seek is within you. Therefore, know yourself. By the way, Aristotle and Plato said the same thing. They were also illuminated beings. They were enlightened beings. That doesn't go in the history books, does it? You don't hear much of that, but they were. Therefore, know yourself. Your body is indeed the temple of God. Simply open the door of your heart and enter in. Like this is a temple, and then God kind of sits on the throne. And we're like looking for all the fanciful, exciting things around us when the king of our heart is right here and will give everything. If you only go through that door, you knock on the door, right? You say, okay, let me touch into here. Simply open the door of your heart and enter in. Your father, mother awaits you, is awaiting you, and has always been awaiting you for eternity. For eons. Imagine you've had sort of hundreds of thousands of lifetimes, and the God within you is just simply waiting for you to come back, for you to sort of let go of your distractions and go inside. Even now, the Father, Mother runs out upon the stony path you have trod and welcomes that part of yourself you have judged prodigal and returns you to your birthright. That's the story of the prodigal son, which you probably know from reading the Bible. It's like that part of yourself that's what goes out into the wide, wide world and parties and has all kinds of fun and does all kinds of crazy things and gets drunk and takes drugs and has sex and is just crazy. And you're using all the money of your father that your father gave you as your inheritance. Here's your inheritance. I'm going to give it to you. Half of my wealth goes to you. Go and enjoy. And so instead of staying and helping the father, he goes out and, and sort of enjoys life seemingly. Seemingly, this is the key, right? But then after all the partying that the prodigal son does, he's like, oh my God, I've hit the bottom of the barrel, because oftentimes, you've heard that. In fact, there's many stories of people who know AA, right? Alcoholics Anonymous. Many people will get into a sort of rehabilitative program in AA after they hit the rock bottom. And they're completely miserable, and they're like, what am I doing in life? Then suddenly they're like, oh, maybe I should rely on a higher power that is within me. So thus becomes the exploration of myself. I don't need to travel the whole world to have fun or to, see all the sights and to fulfill my bucket list. Like, this is not the point. The extraordinary wonders inside you are waiting. Once you touch into that, you might call it the sunlit path, where everything is so beautiful to you, and things that seem dark. There's no such thing as darkness. So when people say, someone asked Swami Purna, oh, there's a darkness going around in the world. There's a darkness in certain people. And Swami Purna says, what darkness? I don't see any darkness. This darkness is in, you create this for yourself. So then prodigal son finally, after doing all the fun things and crazy things of the world, finally comes back with his head between his, or his tail between, what is it called? Tail between his legs? Yeah, that's it. Tail between his legs. And comes back to the father. And the father sees, the son who spent all the inheritance on quote unquote wrong living, sees the son in the distance and runs and reaches his son and holds him and embraces him, takes him to his heart and says, I'm so happy that my son has returned. My son who was lost is now found. Let us now have a great celebration. My son has returned. See, that story is so symbolic. So symbolic. It's like the God, creator, that divine being in your heart waits for you and loves you no matter what you do, no matter seemingly what quote unquote bad things you've done. It doesn't matter. He is waiting for you all along. And it does not change the love whatsoever. What you could have murdered, raped, killed, pillaged, anything. And you come back to that Father who's been waiting for you all along, embraces you and says, welcome back. We want to celebrate you. So then, together we celebrate that principle of divine love in the very core of your being, always there. Always soft. Always tender, kind. We sing the mantra Anandam, Premanandam, Prem, Prem, divine love. It's the awakening of that within you. mantra does the purification. It clears away anything that is not aligned with love. Dissolves it like magic. Like casting a love spell. That you fall in love with yourself. When a child is young, he or she loves, falls down, gets back up again, still loves. No reason to shut down the heart. The child is innocent. Life is simple. There's no plotting or manipulating or controlling. It's just play. Christ said, to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must become like a child. Laugh and play. See the joy in life. There's some very interesting things to know. First of all, Judas Iscariot is considered the one who betrayed Christ. And yet Christ actually told him to do it. That was part of the grand plan. The crucifixion was all a setup in order to show that to the world that there is no such thing as death, that one can never die. And so Judas was told by Yeshua to go and tell the authorities where Yeshua was. And then when Yeshua was brought to the cross and hung there, he was in such a state, so far beyond the human body, that he wasn't suffering. People think, oh, well, he was suffering so much. No. Christ had gone beyond, so there was no suffering. People who were watching him, watching the body on the cross, were suffering, were in pain. Those people who were close to him, there was agonizing there for sure, but he himself was aware of his divine being. So the body, they could do whatever they wanted to the body, but he's not the body. And so when the body seemingly died, you could say he went into so-called hibernation, meaning he went into samadhi, went into deep meditation where all his life signs, all the pulse and everything was gone, and so people thought he was dead. But he wasn't. And so then they put him into the tomb, which was made specifically with a vibration in which the soul then could come back and enliven the body again. And then when the body came back to life, it was renewed and it became translucent, or it became a subtle body where it has this sort of glow. And then after that, Christ lived for decades afterwards and simply traveled all over. In fact, he was supposedly he was seen all over the world. Actually, he visited other continents and so on and so forth. So he continued on with his life, and his family members saw him every so often, and you would see him coming, and he would be like this, almost like a glowing angel. Although he had a physical body, it was like half in, half out. You could say, not quite here, and kind of like a heavenly body. And of course, those who were closest to him could communicate with him in the subtle realms, in the higher realms, could connect with him, and so they didn't need to be around him physically in order to communicate or find out what he was doing. And this is the mystical path. This is not unusual. Yogis have been doing this for ages. Now, Christ learned a significant amount. So when he went to India during his teens, it was 7 years that he went to India, and he particularly, there's one very interesting story where he went up into the high Himalayas to meet a few great yogis, including Gautama Buddha, as well as Maitreya, and of course Babaji. And Babaji was the one who was kind of the head of that, you could say, ashram high in the Himalayas. And so he went to go see Babaji, and Babaji initiated him in, you could say, some of the great yogic secrets that are so, because Babaji also, as you probably know this too, is the same idea, an immortal being who has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years on earth, helping people with their spiritual path, and he'll appear here and there with a little physical body, but then he can sort of disappear and then locate himself somewhere else as well. So both Christ and Babaji were similar, but Christ learned from him and then took the teachings back to the Palestine area, and then at that point he was quite illuminated, and he began his some while after he began his ministry, and particularly he focused on the poor and the downtrodden, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because Christ is a manifestation of pure love. Pure love. And so those people who are downtrodden were like his sheep, and oftentimes the ones who were the downtrodden were the ones who needed help and were willing to listen. So they would be attracted because they had heard that he had done miracles, so they would gather around, and one by one, he and his wife, Mary Magdalene, would heal these people of diseases that would be impossible to heal. And he got into trouble because he was working with people on the Sabbath, Sunday. And at that time, the Jews said, you can't work on Sunday, Sabbath, because that's the time where you're supposed to take a break, because God took a break, so humans should take a break. And of course, Yeshua, that didn't work for Yeshua. It's like, that's a man-made rule. It's not a God rule, it's a man-made rule. And so he was helping all these people heal, and they were seeing the miracles. And then they would sit around again in satsang and listen to his teachings. And all you have to do is sit around a master, and the love rubs off on you. The love rubs off on you. It's satsang, association with a master who is the living embodiment of truth and love, joy and bliss itself. And you sit and learn, and even better, you serve that being as well. So many people wanted to join him, many of the disciples, and he didn't just have 12 disciples, he had 144 disciples that were close to him. And they were half males and half women, so they weren't just 12 male disciples. So they would go with him and travel around in a very rigorous schedule, not schedule, but I mean they didn't sleep much, and healed thousands and thousands of people in a very, very short period of time. Like his ministry was so short before, the Romans finally, had the quote unquote trial. And the funny thing was that the Roman, you could say, governor or whatever of that region actually liked Christ, so didn't even want to crucify him. But the people, the mobs, so to speak, said crucify him, so he said, okay, so be it. And he says, I washed my hands of this, and then he was crucified. And again, all part of the plan. Like Christ knew all along that this was going to happen. And that's even more astonishing, that he could be in such love and service and peace, where even like the people around him were close to him, all the disciples were quite like agitated by what was coming to a head, where his body was going to be crucified. But again, if you don't identify with the body, if you're beyond that, then what worry is there? What's the problem? And it was what he was meant to do as part of his dharma anyway. So it's kind of an astonishing story. I mean, his role in being here now, because he is here, is to awaken your Christ inside you. This is his only purpose. And many enlightened beings, you could say, when they become enlightened, sort of go into the higher heavenly realms and never return to earth. But Christ would come back, and still continues to come back, even unto earth, even reincarnates to come to assist in bringing more and more love onto this planet. Not because he has to, because there's such an empathy and sweetness about him that every person on this planet is not going to be left behind. That's why the story of, the 100 sheep, and how the good shepherd takes care of the 100 sheep, and one sheep wanders away, and then the shepherd is concerned about that one sheep to bring them back into the herd, to help that one sheep that has been left behind. That is what a bodhisattva is. He said, I will not go into the highest heavens until I have helped my brethren, my brothers and sisters. I will not stop until everyone is happy. And so we'll do one last meditation together. And so we close our eyes. You can actually place both your hands on your chest. Breathe in deeply through the nose, slowly, and then hold at the top of the breath. Hold the breath. Release all the air slowly. Inhale deeply. Hold. Release gently. Deep breath in. Hold. Let go slowly. Breathe in deeply. Hold. Release gently. One last deep breath in. Hold. And let go slowly. And relax the hands. And notice the presence of love in your heart. And now we pray that Christ may help us to activate our heart that we may actually feel the love in a palpable way, stronger than we have ever felt before. Please help us to know what true divine love is. Help us to bring our heart alive. And then allow all of our attention to go into that presence. Dive into the heart presence. Leave the world behind. Merge. Let go of our body and mind and our life, and dive into this presence fully. happy and free. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. 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 Thank you, Swamiji. We place our hands in prayer position in front of our heart. We'll chant together Om Shanti, 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 sending a wave of peace to all beings in this world. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace. Peace.